everybody, welcome back to the Daughter Arise channel. Hope that you're all doing well this beautiful Friday afternoon. So as you can see, I'm in my vest top and you guessed it, summer is finally here. I've been out all morning with my friend. We've been just chilling down at the park, catching up, eating ice lollies and just chilling out. And it's been so nice, it's been so relaxing, and it's been a lovely time just to refresh and just to unwind from the working week. Hope that you're going to get some time to do that over the bank holiday weekend. They reckon it's going to be beautiful outside for the rest of the weekend, and that temperatures are going to be in the high 80s. So whatever you do this weekend, make sure it's fun, it's relaxing, and that you have a nice time. So basically, as I said in the last video that I uploaded, I was going to do a small quick review on Three Girls. I did mention that I had watched the series. It first aired on Tuesday, May the 16th, and it was over 3 nights. If you haven't had a chance to watch Three Girls, I suggest that you watch it. It is an excellent dramatisation of what actually happened to the 3 girls involved in the Rochdale grooming scandal. They were abused, sexually exploited and abused by Pakistani men, a group of them who trafficked them out and basically raped them. That's all I can say. It was very hard to watch, and I know that's why it's probably came a bit late in the day, because it did air last week, but I found it extremely hard to watch, and I needed some time to actually get my thoughts together before I did this review. It was very hard to actually see what was going on with the young girls. So I'm going to just kind of give my commentary on it and just kind of fill you in. I won't spoil the whole thing for you. If you haven't watched it, I suggest, as I said, that you do check it out. So basically, Three Girls tells the story of Holly, Amber and Ruby, as I said, who were victims of the grooming and sexual abuse at the hands of a gang of Pakistani men in Rochdale. It was described as the biggest child protection scandal in history. That just tells you the huge scale of what happened there. And it was shocking, because as I was reading about it and looking up about the scandal in Rotherham and in Rochdale, over 1,400 girls have been sexually exploited and abused in that one county. And this is going back as early as 1991, where reports were made to the councils and the police that this was going on, but nothing was done about it. And it was just shocking to me that something like this could happen and nobody do anything. I think about the mindset of why the police and authorities would not take this seriously. Anyway, so the story covers mainly Holly, Amber and Ruby, who were the 3 girls who the story is centred around. But obviously there are other girls that had been through it as well during that period of time. Holly, she had a fairly decent upbringing, came from a relatively normal family, but Holly went through some problems in her teenage years, where she started to, as with most teenagers, start to try and assert their own authority, and became rebellious against her parents' rules and things that were going on in their house. And from that, she had a boyfriend who she went to school with, and it's through him, his cousin Amber, that's who she met and started to go around with her. Now, as the story proceeds, Amber, it seems Amber is the one that has kind of led her down this path into the hands of these Asian men, who at first, it was always odd to me anyway, because why are you big men hanging around or inviting young white girls to hang around your kebab shop? That was weird in itself. But anyway, Amber invited her to come along to this guy who they called Daddy, his kebab shop, and there were other Asian men there, and you know, they proceeded to just seem like have a good time. They were, you know, the Asian men were giving them money, cigarettes, free kebabs, and obviously if you're a 13, 14-year-old girl who's getting all this kind of stuff, you're not going to think nothing of it. But as the story goes on, it becomes more evident what is actually being played out here. There were many scenes within it I found actually really, really tough, and one of those scenes was where Holly, the first time when the guy whose daddy, he's a big Asian Pakistani guy in his at least 50s, says he wants to talk to her in another room, and when he takes her in there, I mean, she was very apprehensive about going in there in the first place, and it's clear that Amber knew what was going to go on in there, because unfortunately she was a victim of this herself. He said to her, "When are you going to have sex with me?" And she was like, "What? What do you mean?" You know, it's totally blindsided her, because this was not what she expected. He was saying that, you know, he gave her money, gave her cigarettes, gave her alcohol, and how she had to give him something, and he proceeded to rape her, and it was just horrible. It was a horrible thing to watch. I found it very, very hard to actually watch that. And afterwards, Holly was absolutely devastated. It cuts to her being in the bath, sitting there completely shocked, devastated by what's happened to her. And then obviously Amber comes into her and tries to say whatever to her. I must admit, when I first saw Amber come up in the storyline, and how you could see how she was an influence over her, because Holly seemed to really gravitate towards her and was looking to her for friendship or whatever. She seemed to think she was cool. That's what the impression I got. But as the storyline going, I thought, oh gosh, you know, Amber seems to be, and this is a type of friend that you definitely want to avoid. But it was evident and clear as time was going on within the series that she herself is a victim of the grooming and the sexual exploitation that was going on with these Asian men. Amber had a boyfriend, well, so-called boyfriend, but obviously he was like grooming her and sending her out there to recruit more younger girls in for him and his disgusting peers. I mean, I just want to say here that these men are absolutely foul animals, and you know, they're disgusting. Every time you think that you hear it all with perpetrators of sexual abuse in whatever form they come in, you hit a new low. I mean, here were these men who were using these girls, raping them. It was just absolutely shocking and disgusting to hear. These big men, I mean, I don't understand it. I can't get my mind around it. But it was obvious that Amber was one of these that was recruited into that. I don't know how. It kind of seemed like the three girls were in a place where they were really vulnerable, all of them, including Amber and her sister also as well, Ruby, who had some learning difficulties. But Amber was the one that they were using to get the girls in and take them places, and Amber would show up and get Holly and collect her to go somewhere. And these guys, you know, they ran a taxi firm, or they were taxi drivers and stuff. I found it shocking actually, because my attitude towards Amber at first was to think, no, you know, she's not a nice friend. But as time went on, you could see she was clearly being used as well. Unfortunately, you know, the more it went on, is the more deeper she got into it, and her sister was also being used in it. I thought the sister Ruby was quite hyperactive, but I didn't realise that she had a learning difficulties and learning disorder, and it was sad that she was exploited into that situation as well. It became more evident that this was something that was not new to. There was a worker at the sexual worker, health worker at the clinic named Saira Rowbotham. You know, this is the type of woman that you would want to work in an organisation that deals with children who are vulnerable, whether that would be in this role that she was in, or in social services or the police, because she really was on the ball right from the beginning. Her and her team, you know, were asking questions, the young girls questions. They were coming in for condoms, you know. Ruby was saying now they've got a boyfriend and now he's Asian and stuff like that, and the alarm bells started ringing for Sarah. She was thinking, you know, this sounds familiar. We've seen this before when she kind of had a conversation with her colleagues. You know, they had been documenting all these things for a period of years, you know, from other girls who had come in. Now, I remember right at the beginning I said in Rochdale alone, 1,400 girls have been victims of child sexual exploitation and grooming. So they had seen, obviously, from over time, a pattern reoccurring. And, you know, Sarah documented everything, her and her team, the taxi drivers, names that came up, shops that these young girls were visiting and stuff like that. And she said it's happening again. So she realised that what was going on with the grooming and the children being trafficked and passed around was continuing on. One of the things I found really sad was that when she tried to alert the authorities to this, she had meetings with the social services and police. Their attitude was absolutely shocking, really disgusting. These people were getting paid all this money, you know, to be in the know about what was going on with vulnerable children and what was going on in the community, but they didn't seem to really care. And when she was coming to them, bringing her evidence, documented evidence of what was going on, they were really blasé and really didn't want to know. And the attitude seemed to be going on. It seemed to be a common thread throughout the whole of the earlier years when it was all brought to light, when she brought it to light. Again, you know, when Holly was arrested for smashing the kebab shop, and the police officer, the detective, was questioning her, they were really rough with her, really rough in the questioning of her. She was a young, vulnerable girl, you know, and he was saying, you know, oh, well, you know, he's had sex with you before, and why did you go back again? No one goes back again if they're being raped. You know, this is the thing that he didn't understand. Fear can make, even though something bad has happened to this young girl, it was fear that made her go back. Remember, he was threatening her, saying, you know, if she ever told anybody, how he'd kill her, he'd do things to her family. So fear was what made her go back. Physically, she didn't want to go back, and she got there in the end, where she was able to kind of go into. It was so touching when you saw her go into her dad's arms. He turned up at Amber's house, or the boyfriend's house, and he kind of held her and just kind of moved her into the car. I mean, you know, she physically couldn't move. She physically didn't think she could get away. Every time she went home or something, you know, Amber kept getting her back, and she kept going back, and she was being shipped straight away to be raped. Her, Amber, and Ruby were being raped. I mean, it was just terrible to watch. It was horrible. What they had to go through, and the repeated cries for help were just completely ignored. I mean, Holly, she was just so broken, and you could see in her face she was so drained, so it's like she had given up, you know. But Amber, she was scared, but it's like she kind of developed a hard exterior. I mean, this guy Tariq was grabbing her by her hair and all sorts, and Ruby, well, you know, she was just going along with it. She thought the guy was her boyfriend up until the end. It was very sad to see, actually, from all angles. I mean, there was a social worker right at the beginning for Holly. I mean, she just seemed like a textbook social worker, you know, one that had no empathy, no concern, and was reading straight from one of her textbooks. She was just a disgrace. I mean, she thought that Holly was a child prostitute. And was kind of reading off to her about the implications of what it would mean for her, all this kind of jargon that she was using. But at no point did she was inquisitive about how was she in this? You know, she just took her at face value, and as Sarah said, viewed her as some slag. You know, it was disgraceful. Right from the beginning, the authorities' attitude really was not good. So as time went on, as I said, they were being raped, being shipped around, given a tenner here, a packet of fags here, and Holly was more and more desperate to get out. And it was just really hard to see how it was affecting her family. Her mum was absolutely devastated. You know, Sarah, her dad was devastated. I mean, there was a scene where she was so hurt, so trying to cry out for help, or trying to get a reaction out of her dad. She started doing all this sexual dancing for her dad, and you could see he was broken by it, the things that she was saying to him and stuff. But you know, she never meant it or anything like that, but it's just the place that she was at. These were the things that she was having to do for these men. How it all came to a head was Ruby became pregnant. Now, the first time around, when they tried to, SARA was taking Ruby to identify cars and different things like that, writing out statements for them. This woman deserves a medal. This SARA lady, she deserves a medal. As a matter of fact, somebody has started a petition to get her work recognised for all she did to help those young victims of sexual abuse by the grooming gangs in Rotherham, in Rochdale, because she really battled and championed their cause. I'll leave a link to the description. I've signed it because I just think she's amazing. She's absolutely an amazing woman. I mean, if we've got all these celebrities out here like the Beckhams and all these other people who can get awards for God knows what, OBEs and all this type of stuff for I don't know what they do. They seem to be dished out like they're giving out lollies or something like that. Why can't this woman be recognised in some form for her work that she has done to help these victims? She fought, she battled for them. She took on the authorities, and she was doing this for so many years. And as a matter of fact, when they did the panel inquiry, it showed that she made 83 referrals and nothing was done. That is absolutely disgraceful, and it's no wonder that after everything that happened, that she suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder and depression. It must have been absolutely terrible for her, and I'm glad that she's been able to recover. So everything came to a head basically. Ruby ended up being pregnant by one of the gang who was sexually abusing her. Now, I was watching this for a while, and it hit me when about Holly and seeing everything, but it really struck a chord with me when she was asked by the detective, Ruby, when she was interviewed by them, what happened, and she said she was like a ball, and the officer said to her, "What do you mean?" And she was saying that basically she was put in the middle of a circle of these dirty, disgusting men, Pakistani groomers, who were doing these things to these young girls. She was put in the middle of them. And, I'm going to be honest here, this is why the first time round, when it should have gone to trial, it didn't, because it was all this political correctness, how would it look because they're Asian and the victims are white, it's going to look like we're racist. It was political correctness gone mad. And that is what allowed them to continue to get away with it. But basically, we call it what it is. And I think even with this whole subject, with sexual abuse and everything, we need to call a spade and stop mincing words and stop pussyfooting around certain subjects. If people are doing this type of crime, they need to be called out for it. They need to be dealt with. It's no point, because they're Asian, or because they're a pastor, or because they're this or that. No, you're doing this behaviour and you deserve nowhere to hide. So people were saying, oh, they were an Asian grooming gang. Now, Asian could mean Chinese or whatever. No, they were Pakistani men. And the guy from the CPS said, while, sex offenders, a high proportion of them are white, and they have a different way that they sexually abuse children, the grooming and child sexual exploitation, where the gangs in Rochdale were grooming, are Pakistani men. I'm not sure if they're Pakistani Kashmiri, but Pakistani men who were doing this type of sexual abuse of children. I mean, it was absolutely disgusting, and it's important that we just name things how it is. That is why they were able to get away with it the first time. CPS said there was insufficient evidence. I don't know how CPS measure a lot of things, but that's seems to be one of their favourite lines. But it was the second time around, I think in 2010, 2011, I think, that the fetus of the abortion that Ruby had was kept in a freezer from earlier years, and the police retrieved that the fetus and did a DNA, some kind of DNA thing, and basically found that one of the groomers was the father of that baby. So that was what pushed the case back open again. And it's interesting also to note that the chief prosecutor who brought that case forward from the CPS at this second time was an Asian man who did this, so it's important to see. I'm not saying that all Asian men are bad, but we have to be honest and open that in this particular town and in towns that are surrounding it, Bradford, Preston, all these different places, Pakistani men are the perpetrators of this grooming, sexual abuse and child trafficking that is going on. So we had the court trial, And basically, Holly and Ruby were the two that the CPS said they would have the strongest likelihood that a jury would believe them and possibly secure a conviction. Amber, unfortunately, did not get that chance. They said that because the CPS or was looking on her as part of the ones that was doing the grooming, even though she was groomed herself to be like a kind of like a groomer to get all the other girls in, to lure them in. She was a victim herself, and I thought that was a bit unfair, but she seemed to put on an exterior about it. I'm sure she must have been hurt, but Holly and Ruby were the two that they used to, to bring the case forward. They were both interviewed by video, and it was surreal to actually see it in the court, because we had 9 defendants on trial, and each of them had their own barrister. So you see in the beginning of the trial, nine for the defendant, all sitting there in their little wigs and black gowns, each cross-examining and questioning these 2 girls. I mean, for me, it was uncomfortable to watch, but I can't imagine how it must have been for Holly and Ruby. I mean, I want to just say here, these 2 young girls are absolutely, I admire their strength and their courage, because the way that the barristers at times are trying to twist up their words and twist up what they said and use it against them, and they still stood their ground, For Ruby, it clicked in for her, because right up, they weren't sure if she was going to be able to, give evidence and stuff, because of, she thought the guy was her boyfriend. But I think when the mother kind of broke down to her about the baby and the fetus being in the freezer, I think that's when it hit home for her, and it opened up this whole conversation where she was talking about being passed around for a ball, taken out of a room, man raping her, coming back, and then another man picking a number, and then these men are dirty animals. I'm sorry, they're disgusting, and they deserve to be in prison. And some of them should have got longer. But anyway, they managed to get through the cross-examination, and the jury ruled in their favour, and they got guilty on all charges. And in between that, Holly had to go through so many things. She was obviously suffering from depression, which is understandable. She had a problem with drinking. Her baby got taken off her for a while. And she had all these different things going on for her. But I was so glad that she got justice. And, the one that they had to call Daddy got 19 years. And even when they were sentencing him, he was shouting out, oh, this is racist, and, if I was a white man, I'd be, no, you're talking absolute crap. You are up there and you've been found guilty because you're a dirty old man and you were raping these girls and orchestrating it, and that is why you've got 19 years. The other defendants got a different number of years each, and they're now doing their prison sentences. Although I did hear the other day that some of them are now out, and apparently one of the victims, not one of the 3, but somebody else that was kind of around at that time, a young girl, has seen them in town and stuff, because she still lives in Rotherham. I don't know how many of them are out, but it was just very, very hard to watch. But throughout, I have to say, Holly, I felt it for Holly, Amber and Ruby. I know that Amber was used to get those other girls in, and my heart goes out to all of them. And I hope that, Amber had a baby by Tariq, and I hope that they're all been able to rebuild their lives. They deserve nothing but the best, And it's interesting to know that, from 1991, that, the recordings of from different care homes, is that a lot of these Asian gangs were going to care homes and to girls' schools, picking them up in the taxis and taking them to be raped. It's absolutely disgraceful that this has been allowed to carry on, and they've got a real big problem in that area that's going to need a lot done to kind of eradicate I don't know why. I don't know if people have done a study on why, to look at why these Pakistani men seem to gravitate towards this, and how they can break that, and how they can educate. I don't know if they're doing a lot of education in schools around Rotherham and in Rochdale about warning children of the dangers of exploitation and grooming. But a lot needs to be done in that area. But, I pray every blessing on these girls, and I hope that they're able to rebuild their lives and, get everything that they that they're supposed to get. I mean, Holly's resilience and courage, I mean, even in the midst of all the rape, everything, this girl was going back to school. She passed her exams. You know, she has an amazing tenacity and strength. And I have no doubt that she will go on to do great things. So yeah, basically that is just a small summary of what went on in the Three Girls series. You know, Saira Rowbotham and her team deserve to be recognised for all the work that they did. And you know, the fact that they made SARA redundant, you know, they removed her from being a sexual health worker and then made her redundant. I mean, and saying, you know, she didn't go down the right channels to report it and stuff. These people are full of sound bites and policies and don't have no kind of common sense. And I hope, and you know, the police officer, the head of social services at the time, they jumped ship before, you know, things really hit the fan, you know. But I hope they don't get employed anywhere else again. They cannot be employed by they can't. You know, the complete oversight that they had, even in their own kind of jurisdictions with what was going on, is completely diabolical. But her book, Girl A, as I said, I haven't read all of it because I found it too hard. And yes, you know, I found it hard. Some things made me feel a bit funny because of the rape and everything else. But from what I've read of it, it's a really good book. It's really heartfelt, tells her story of what went on. And you know, if you can read this book, you can buy it from Amazon. And you know, I'm sure the proceeds are going to her and stuff like that. But I hope whatever she does, whatever these three girls do in life, that they can go on and have some kind of normalcy, and that they can have some healing and just go on to lead the lives that they're supposed to lead. You know, and you know, I know that some of them, I think, are trying to maybe help others as well. So I think this is a fantastic tool to have in schools. This series to have, you know, show to school children, obviously of a certain age, but in other ways, you know, working with other children of a lower age to kind of, in a way that they can understand, to know about child sexual exploitation and grooming. But I think this is a fantastic resource for people to understand and see it in effect, how these gangs were grooming these girls and the consequences of that. Also as well, just some quick facts really. As I said, Saira Rowbotham, you know, was trying to alert the authorities for 7 years. She made 83 referrals but was ignored. Use in Rochdale town is widespread. It's a proper problem that they have down there, and it seems like these men think that they're above the law. Multiple names have been passed to Rotherham Council and the police since 2001. And to just help you understand like the context of what the grooming is, basically these girls were being gang raped, forced children to watch rapes, dousing them with petrol, threatening to set them on fire, threatening to rape their mothers and younger sisters, and trafficking them to other towns. There were pregnancies, at least 12, that resulted in abortions, miscarriages, babies removed, babies raised by their mothers, babies removed because of the trauma of all that. And as I said, Holly had her baby removed, and Amber, I think that at one point they were threatening to remove her baby as well because they were seeing her as the perpetrator, because she was helping to, they were saying she was helping to exploit children. They were saying that her daughter Yasmin was at risk. So this is shocking, absolutely shocking. These men are nothing more than animals, but they're going to have to answer to what they did. And if people know that this stuff is going on, they need to contact the police and contact it to the local authorities and make notes, because as we can see in Rotherham, they didn't really take it seriously. I'm hoping since that time that lessons have been learned and that they have put in things to kind of help children and social workers and workers to be able to deal with this effectively and swiftly, and have a team that is like dedicated, whether that's in the police as well, to solely just to be looking at this. This is an epidemic problem here, and from what I saw at the end of the documentary, it was in Preston, Bradford, all these other towns. I don't know why, but you know, it's just like when we read about the sexual abuse of children in kids' homes in Lambeth and Croydon, and recently Lambeth had to pay out 40 million to those to the survivors of that. But you know, it seems that predators, people who paedophiles, gravitate towards children in care, schools, because they think there are a lot of vulnerable children there. And it's especially sickening because a lot of kids who are in care, I mean, that's one of the things they said with this, that a lot of Rotherham care homes, these taxis were turning up, picking up children from there. It's because they feel that because they already have a damaged upbringing or have gone through some kind of family trauma or dysfunction, that these children are more easier to do these things too, because who was going to believe them? They probably display some dysfunctional behaviour, have difficulties in their life. So they reckon the chances are nobody's going to really believe them. And that's a common thread that we see through with the, as I said, the kids' homes recently, where the people were going in the kids' homes in Lambeth and Shirley and stuff, and taking these children and abusing them, to what we're seeing with the grooming gangs in Rotherham. They seem to target vulnerable children. So that is my review. It's just really a quick oversight. I don't want to spoil it all for you because so much happened. It would be impossible for me to fit it all in, and I was just trying to get it out quickly. But I will leave the link in the description bar below. That is where you can watch it on catch up on BBC iPlayer. Also as well, I will, as I said, you can get Girl A's book. I'll put that link in the description bar as well if you want to read her story, and you know, just check out the documentary for yourself. Also as well, I will leave a link to the NSPCC website if you know anybody that has been going through grooming or being exploited sexually. You know, you can report it to NSPCC. I mean, they are a really good organisation. They have so much information on there, you know, that deals with all kinds of things in regards to children. So you can contact them on that number too. So that is it for now. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.